Have you ever stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, you are not who you really believe you are? This question may sound unsettling at first glance, but it is precisely here that our journey begins. Imagine for a moment that everything you consider part of your identity, your memories, your tastes, your deepest beliefs, is nothing more than a carefully constructed creation over the years. I'm not suggesting that you are false, but rather that there is something much greater and deeper hidden beneath all these layers. What if I told you that accessing this hidden dimension could completely transform your understanding of who you are? Before we move forward, I'd like to invite you to be part of this exploration more regularly. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, it would be amazing to have you join us on this journey of discovery. Click the subscribe button now and activate notifications so you don't miss any transformative insights. Now think with me, how often during the day do you actually stop and question your own perceptions? We are so immersed in our routines, so conditioned to automatically respond to external stimuli, that we rarely realize we are operating on autopilot most of the time. It's as if we were puppets being manipulated by invisible strings, driven by patterns of thought and behavior that we don't even question. The ancient Greeks had a fascinating word for this: prosoche. It was the state of full attention, of conscious vigilance over our thoughts and actions. The Stoics practiced this as a form of mental liberation, understanding that every moment of mindful awareness was an opportunity to choose how they wanted to live, rather than simply reacting to external events. Have you noticed how often we live like leaves being carried by the wind, without ever truly deciding our own direction? But here's the crucial point. This awareness isn't something that simply happens to us. It needs to be cultivated, exercised like a muscle that has been neglected for too long. It's like when we learn to ride a bike for the first time. It feels awkward at first, even scary. But with continuous practice, we start to develop balance and control. What if I told you there is a kind of secret code within us? A silent language that operates beneath the surface of our conscious minds? This idea echoes across various ancient traditions, from Egyptian Hermetic teachings to Buddhist sutras. They spoke of a state of higher wakefulness, where the individual transcends the illusion of the ego and connects with something far vaster. This state isn't reserved only for monks or mystics. It is within reach of anyone willing to look within themselves. Now, imagine this. You're in a dark room surrounded by objects you can't see clearly. You move cautiously, afraid of tripping or bumping into something. But then, someone turns on the light. Suddenly, everything makes sense. The space that once seemed threatening now reveals its true nature. Consciousness works similarly. When we begin to illuminate the dark corners of our mind, we realize that many of the fears and limitations we carry are merely projections of our own ignorance. Think, with me, how many of the decisions we make daily are based on fear? Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. What if I told you that this fear, most of the time, is just a reflection of something that doesn't even exist in the present moment? It's a shadow cast by past experiences, a narrative we've created to explain the world around us. But here's the secret. You don't have to remain a prisoner of those stories. Modern psychologists call this confirmation bias. We naturally seek evidence that supports our pre-existing beliefs, ignoring anything that contradicts our point of view. It's as if we were wearing colored glasses that distort reality, yet we insist on saying that the world is the color we see through them. Have you ever stopped to think about how many opportunities we miss because we refuse to take off those glasses? There's a fascinating story in Norse mythology that illustrates this concept well. It's said that Odin, the supreme god, sacrificed one of his eyes in exchange for drinking from the well of Mimir, a spring that granted infinite wisdom. This act symbolizes something profound. To reach a higher level of consciousness, we need to be willing to let go of comfortable certainties. We must accept that what we think we know may only be a fraction of the truth. And here arises an intriguing philosophical mystery. If consciousness is so powerful, why do so many people seem to resist exploring it? Why do we prefer to stay on The surface swimming in shallow waters, instead of diving into the unknown depths of our being. Are we afraid of what we might find down there? Or is it simply that we haven't been taught to value this pursuit? Let's return for a moment to the concept of autopilot. Have you noticed that at many moments you act almost robotically? You get up, have breakfast, go to work, interact with the people around you, all without really being present. It's as if there are two versions of you, one that lives life and another that simply observes while life happens. Which one is the real you? Neuroscientists have been studying this phenomenon for decades. They've discovered that much of our daily actions are controlled by the subconscious mind, while our conscious mind barely participates. This explains why we often make seemingly irrational decisions or repeat harmful behavioral patterns, even though we know we should act differently. But what if we could reprogram these patterns? What if we could take control of our own narrative? There's an ancient technique practiced by Zen masters that can help us with this. It's called Zazen, or seated meditation. The idea isn't to achieve some extraordinary state of spiritual ecstasy, but simply to observe. Observe the thoughts that arise, without judging them, without trying to change them. It's like watching clouds pass in the sky. They come, stay for a moment, and then go away. Over time, this practice creates a healthy distance between you and your thoughts, allowing you to choose which ones to nurture and which to let go. But let's go back to that initial question. Who are you really? If we strip away all the layers, your profession, your relationships, your material possessions, even your memories, what remains? Some would say that what's left is the pure essence of your consciousness, what the Hindus call Atman, the true self. Others might argue that this essence is indistinguishable from the universe itself, an extension of cosmic consciousness. Which of these perspectives resonates more with you? Now imagine for a moment that you're like a drop of water in the ocean. While it remains separate, it believes it is something distinct, unique, and independent. But when it merges back into the ocean, it realizes that it has always been part of it. This metaphor is often used to describe the relationship between the individual and the whole. However, the question that remains is, how can we experience this fusion without losing our individuality? Perhaps the answer lies in understanding that separation is just an illusion created by our limited minds. When we expand our consciousness, we begin to perceive the subtle connections that unite all things. Interestingly, quantum physics supports this idea. Subatomic particles can influence each other instantly, regardless of the distance between them. This suggests that, at some fundamental level, everything is interconnected. But let's return to your everyday reality. How can you apply these grand ideas to your practical life? Start small. Observe your thoughts without attachment. Question your most ingrained beliefs. Allow yourself to feel uncomfortable occasionally, because it's in that space of uncertainty that growth happens. Remember, discomfort is the price we pay for transformation. How can we be both an infinitesimal part of the universe and at the same time carry within us something that transcends the universe itself? It seems confusing, doesn't it? But this tension between the individual and the universal is exactly where the power of consciousness resides. Imagine an orchestra. Each instrument has its unique sound, its own sonic identity. However, when they all play together in harmony, something greater emerges than any of them individually: the music. You can think of this as a metaphor for our existence. We are the instruments, but we are also part of the cosmic symphony. And here's the big mystery. Is our role just to follow the written score, or can we improvise and create new melodies? This idea reminds me of an intriguing story about Johann Sebastian Bach. It's said that during an improvised performance on an organ, he was able to transform a simple musical theme into a complex and moving masterpiece. He wasn't bound by predefined notes. Instead, he used them as a starting point to explore new musical territories. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could do the same with our lives? Use the circumstances around us as opportunities to create something new, something unexpected? But here's the catch. To improvise, we need to be fully present in the moment. We can't cling to past mistakes or anxiously anticipate the future. We need to trust that even without a detailed plan, we'll find beauty in what we create. This requires courage and a lot of practice. Think with me. How often do you hesitate before acting because you're afraid of making a mistake? What if I told you that the mistake, in fact, could be a doorway to something greater? Zen masters have a phrase for this: great doubt, great awakening. The more difficult questions we ask ourselves, the closer we get to discovering deep truths. For example, have you ever stopped to reflect on why we value certain things so much? Money, status, social approval, and neglect others, like inner peace, genuine connection, and purpose? Are we looking in the wrong place? This relentless pursuit of external validation has ancient roots. Since the dawn of humanity, survival meant belonging to a group. Those who were excluded faced serious risks. Evolutionarily, we developed psychological mechanisms that drive us to seek acceptance. The problem is that today, these mechanisms often trap us in patterns that no longer serve us. We're trying to fit pieces of an old puzzle into a completely new world. Now, imagine that you decide to abandon this game. What if, instead of constantly seeking approval, you started cultivating an authentic relationship with yourself? I'm not talking about narcissism or self-indulgence, but deep listening. It's as if you finally allowed your inner voice to be heard, without interruptions, without judgment. Have you ever experienced that feeling? If not, perhaps it's time to take the first step. What if I told you there's a way to access this internal dimension that goes beyond words and thoughts? Mystics call it pure consciousness, a state where you simply are, without needing justifications or explanations. In this state, you are no longer divided between subject and object, observer and observed. Everything merges into perfect unity. Sounds impossible? Maybe. But many have experienced it, and their descriptions are surprisingly consistent. Remember the story of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha? He spent years practicing extreme austerities, seeking answers in the religious traditions of his time. It was only when he gave up these external searches and sat under the Bodhi tree, determined not to rise until he reached enlightenment, that he finally found what he was looking for. What he discovered wasn't in a book or teaching. It was within him all along. What if the same truth applied to you? Let me ask another provocative question. What would you do if you knew no one was really watching you? I'm not talking about physical privacy, but a deeper level. What if you realize that all external expectations, those voices in your head telling you what you should or shouldn't do, are merely mental creations? How would you live your life if you were absolutely certain that no one was keeping track of your successes and failures? This freedom may sound frightening at first glance. After all, we're conditioned to depend on external structures to guide us. But what if I told you that by embracing this uncertainty, you discover an inner strength you never imagined you had? That strength doesn't come from outside. It's already within you, waiting to be recognized. Speaking of which, I want to share something you might not have considered. The idea that every person who crosses your path, every experience you live through, is a reflection of hidden aspects of who you are. This doesn't mean everything revolves around you, but rather that the world functions like a giant mirror, reflecting your beliefs, emotions, and intentions back to you. Have you noticed how some situations seem to repeat constantly in your life? What if those repetitions were messages you haven't deciphered yet? Medieval alchemists had an expression for this: as above, so below. They believed that the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, the individual, were perfect reflections of each other. By understanding yourself better, you also understand the world around you, and vice versa. This holistic vision invites us to rethink our relationship with reality. We are not mere passive spectators, but active co-creators of our experience. Now think about this. If you could choose just one thing to change in your life right now, what would it be? Not a superficial change, like switching jobs or buying something material, but something that directly affects how you see the world. What's stopping you from making that change today? Is it the fear of the unknown? A lack of clarity about the next step? Or perhaps the feeling that you don't deserve something better? This last question is especially important. Many of us carry a narrative of insufficiency, an inner voice that tells us we're not good enough, smart enough, or hardworking enough. But what if that voice were just a distorted echo of past experiences with no basis in the present? What if you decided to replace it with something different, something that inspires you instead of limiting you? We've reached the culmination of this journey. Remember when we talked about the drop of water in the ocean? Now think about it in reverse. The entire ocean fits inside each drop. Yes, you read that right. Inside you, at this very moment, exists the totality of the universe. All the answers you're looking for, all the solutions to your problems, are already available if you know where to look. The secret isn't in adding more information, but in removing the barriers that block your vision. So, here's the final insight. Consciousness isn't something you achieve. It's already there, latent, waiting to be recognized. What we call awakening is simply the process of removing the layers of illusion that prevent us from seeing the truth. When you allow that inner light to shine, everything around you begins to change. Not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you look at it. Before closing, I'd like to leave a special invitation. Share in the comments which moment of this video touched you the most. A word, a phrase, anything that deeply resonated with you. I also encourage you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might benefit from these reflections. Together, we can build a community of people committed to personal and spiritual growth. Are you ready for this journey?